Are you live already?
Yeah. I don't know if anybody's gonna get on here.
Maybe. Are you signed on?
I'm a little late to doing the live video. I have a steer that thinks he's a steeple-chaser. And if you can imagine me outside with my arms around how much do you weigh? How much does he weigh? Like, what?
I don't know. I'm sure he's several hundred pounds.
Yeah, several pound steer screaming the top of my lungs, get me a lead rope! So I have some important things to talk about today and this is for the past 5 days that I've accumulated some of this. And I think it's all connected and something that we should definitely keep an eye on. The first thing that I want to point out, and so there's some mainstream stuff that I do take a look at because I do want to see what they're saying, what they're talking about, who they're interviewing, and it gives you some indication on things, situations that we're in. And one of the things I think it's important to note that I saw was that a CBS correspondent, Catherine Herridge, I think that's how you pronounce her last name, is predicting a black swan event in 2024. And she's quoted saying, a national security crisis with unpredictable high impact. So if you don't know, and I've never heard, have you ever heard of a black swan event?
Yeah.
When? And when, in like what situation have you heard that?
You know, I can't say I know remember the context, but so black swan just indicates that this isn't normal. It doesn't follow a normal pattern of events, but it is something that stands out and changes the course of things. I guess it's significant. It's historically significant, but not historically normative.
And so you'll go online and some things like there's a black swan event. This one says, a black swan event is a catastrophic event of global proportion that opens up new ways of functioning. I can't really see it. It makes way for the old to be replaced by new and inventive methods, rules, and technologies. And so here's the other one. It states, the black swan theory. These events are considered catastrophic events that have high level of impact on the global economy. These events cannot be predicted well in advance. They have severe repercussions. All science, logic, and astrology fall in predicting such events. All the strategic planners and thinkers do plan or predict the occurrence of such events. So, I think, and I think we've done a couple of videos on the financial situations that we're in right now as a country and globally. And so, when they start talking about these things, we need to keep in mind that what we're dealing with, the world has never dealt with before. And when we talk about, there's people that talk about the Great Depression and things that we have watched, and what they're discussing is far worse than what happened in the 30s. And the impact, it's not globally, is what I'm, it's something that.
Well, black swan, I think, when you say black swan, I think it indicates that there's going to be some event, some catalyst. There's something around. You'll hear people say false flag. Well, why is false flag important? Not because it's merely false, but because it warrants response. Mm-hmm. Anytime there's an event, then you even see public outcry for the government to respond. So a black swan event is something that provokes legislation. It provokes a change in economic policy and foreign strategy. So it's a catalyst.
Right.
But there's a number of things, I had actually seen when you talk about catastrophe or laws, one, that's a lot of time on the docket is Second Amendment. And I don't know how true any of this is because I haven't fact-checked any of this, I guess you could say. But we've seen the headlines that some of your liberal states, I guess California, New York, Chicago, they're trying to make it, or have made it legal for illegal immigrants to be police officers. And I'd run across one individual who works in like a gun shop, and he had said something to the effect that they had made an exception. The ATF had made an exception for illegal immigrants and making them able to purchase firearms. Whereas, if you go to buy a firearm, you have to complete a background check and there's, registrations involved.
But it almost makes me think about, and while I think we need to keep our eye on this, I think we also need to keep our eye on the other aspect that, if they're talking about this, what things will they legislate for your safety or to prevent catastrophic national security crisis?
Well,
and I think that's another aspect that that a lot of people missed within the whole past 3 years. I'll state it that way because I don't want to get banned. There was a lot of things that were ushered in for your safety.
Well,
and they actually went against the Constitution. They went against your freedoms, and they promoted, in the stance of emergency, you lose your liberties. That is against everything that this country is founded on. And so I think this is a prime example of something they're going to use to usher in should I say it? The reset? What are they calling it now?
So it might be an important time for people. A lot of times,
It is bacon. Is it bothering you? I can turn it off if you can't hear. I'm trying to take care of my kids.
Yes, bacon is a sweet sound. Is that what you meant?
What were you saying?
Yeah, it is distracting, and it's so good. But anyway, so yes, it was bacon sizzling. He knows the sound well. So as a matter of fact, for those that are listening, because I think that you can get, once you follow some certain people and you find your news sources, you're going to hear all this stuff. We're just relaying the same things.
But I think a lot of people are missing some of these points. And there's so much, I think there's so much going on right now that can be lost I
think it's important right now to make a few connections, that we're saying certain things and we're hearing certain things in the news. It's important for our friends to realize a few things. We can acknowledge that vocabulary is huge, right? That's so in the recent years that we've heard terms used in ways different than they've been historically used. We can all recognize that.
Well, and they're also changing it in the dictionaries.
Well,
that's why it's important.
So
don't buy a new dictionary. Go back to
get your
prior to 1870s.
Yeah, get you an early Webster's or something much older, and even better, something that I would like to throw out there is pick you up a Black's Law dictionary.
They're expensive.
And they are expensive, but if you send us a message, I can probably get you a PDF. That is a sizable PDF. because that is a it's a 1,500 page document, so it's not very usable as a PDF if you're one who wants to print it. Otherwise, you can purchase a Black's Law Dictionary. But I mentioned the firearms. It's important to note, our Constitution says nothing about firearms. It only says something about arms. What you'll find that has been regulated in our modern age are firearms, not arms. So this is very important for those that are discerning. You can do with that what you will. But anyway, the terms are important. They're important for your legality. You want to be a law-abiding citizen. So,
and there's somebody else
that
I want to point out that, I don't watch him frequently or listen to his stuff frequently. But if these things are new to you, there's a man called Jaron Jackson out of Oklahoma, and he has been deep diving into a lot of this as far as constitutional law.
Jaron Jackson is was he a ranger? Am I correct in that? Was he a ranger?
Yeah. I believe he was a ranger.
I think Jaron Jackson was a ranger. He's he's a serial entrepreneur. He had a business owner, and I think COVID had done two things. For one, it did crush his business, like it did a number of small business owners, and it revealed some things, some of the fragility of the business he was in, and so he stepped out. But he's a wonderful Christian brother who's thinking critically about his time, and he's
one of the ones that he's stepping out and talking about these things that have been largely neglected.
Yeah, so he is a friend, and we certainly suggest his material. He's got for preparation those. He's got a really cool. I can go grab that. It's a really cool little field manual.
You go get it. I think they would be interested in that. Bye, Julie. Hope you have a good day. But this is another resource. I think we're always suggesting resources, aren't we?
Yeah, well, families, right, everywhere, man. You got businesses and schools. You do drills, fire drills, things like that, safety, and so preparation is the name of the game. So he's created, I know it's a mirror, it's the Live Local Field Manual. It's literally written in the format of like some of your military field manuals. I don't know if you all have experience with those, but I love it because you've got these audits that have, problem discussions. So you get like this debrief or something, then you've got an action plan. Those are your action items, what you need to do.
And it's very simple.
Yeah, it's just straightforward, a point by point. If you're a list person or someone, it's easy to manage. And this just works through. And so you've got at the individual level, your personal level, at the family level, at the community level. So this is your church or your network of people. And so it's a really cool resource. We've done quite a bit of this as a family. We haven't done as much as I would like. There's a lot at a community level that we need to assure that our public officials, even, we want to ensure that they're aware of some of their rights and their responsibilities. But
okay. So the next thing that I've got is, as we enter 2024, the U.S. has the smallest military in over 80 years. Active duty troop numbers sink to less than 1.3 million. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that.
Ooh, I like it.
And
I like it.
I believe that we need to. I think it's also. I think it also can lead into things such as drafts, if things continue the way the way I think they're going to continue. So, and with the things going on the southern border, we're not in a very good position as far as military standpoint.
Well, there's the discussion around that a lot of times is to evaluate what's going on. How do you feel about the commander in chief or the world events and things? And we've all got our opinions. And then there are those who immediately want to say, they want to revert to their patriotism that draws you to embrace something like a draft. There are those who immediately want to teach you how to dodge the draft, and I guess the best thing to really say is you need to equip yourself now. You need to be thinking in a very critical and a tactical way. I think now as a family, my priority, even as I grow older and things, I do know that I am of an enlistment age still. They've raised the bar because of such low numbers, so I don't know what a draft would look like. But my priority is, how am I going to structure my family? How am I going to, because God forbid, and I think this is unbiblical, to take the provider and protector from a home. And so it's our sons, largely, right? It's our sons that we need to think about. And so they need to realize they're entering into, a hostile situation. And either way, we're having the conversation. This is a conversation that a lot of people's having. How are they going to be able to understand that when they're confronted with those worldviews, when they're confronted with the hostilities, when they're confronted with real dangers? How will they keep their feet grounded? How will they prioritize what they're fighting for? This is I'm not the Lord of the Rings geek that a lot of people are. I have a number of friends who are, but it's kind of like was said whenever the big battle was coming at the wall and the breach was impending upon them, and so he said, I guess there was this risk of death, and he said, well, we fight, and he says, for glory and honor, and he said, no, we fight for what's behind us, it's for their women, for their children, for their home, you fight for that. And so I hate to be, but at the end of the day, where I have a heart that would love to see the gospel go to the end of the earth, at the end of the day, these are my people. This is my fortress. This is where the breach cannot occur, and if it does, it is life or death. And so you have to think in that way. Not hostile. We're not talking about guns, but we're talking about being equipped, fortifying your mind. I like to think of Scripture. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you can discern what is your spiritual worship. Discern what is the good and perfect will of God, which is your spiritual worship. That's Romans 12, 1 and 2. But I think it's time to think that way now, to begin thinking tactically, to have a situational awareness, to build the game plan, do something like this Live Local field manual, and just to get you talking about it. This is a great resource, but you can do it on your own, but you just got to be able to think. And I think
I think the public is largely ignorant of a lot of things that he goes through and a lot of things that he's been learning.
Yeah. So, and basically the motivation behind that is because he's one of those guys. Jaron Jackson's one of those guys who spent time in Afghanistan, and so he's taken what he's learned, what he's seen firsthand in achieving asymmetry within government structures, and he's been able to see how one of the most primitive cultures in the world was able to outlast and outmaneuver one of the strongest, most advanced militaries in the world. In other words, how the Afghans had survived, how this movement could survive and thrive and outlast the American military, and so that's what he applies. He applies those tactics to your local living to say, we can, as communities, our American government's not going to save us. It's going to take the American people. It's going to take you knowing your rights, exercising your rights. It's going to take that mindset the Japanese fear. There's someone with a gun hiding behind every blade of grass, and it's not the guns, I would argue, but it's strong men with strong families who build strong children and who develop strong communities, who step up and serve in strong offices within their local situation. And so you got to be those people. There's no one else.
All right, so the next thing, and we're just gonna touch on this briefly, but there was some spending grievance report done by Senator Rand Paul that states that there was over $900 billion in government waste spending, and he states that it's everybody's fault. As members of both parties in Congress voted to raise the debt ceiling, empowering the government to borrow an unlimited amount of money until 2024. So I have not kept an eye on the spending. We've got how many days do we have left in 2023? A week.
Yeah.
So we'll see what 2023 concludes with as far as.
Well, there's loads of it. What? Just let's well, the something that hey, Abram, let's cut it down.
Children.
So the right, this is no surprise to me, because they're just now, people are beginning to look at this, and thankfully we have politicians that are looking at what's the spending. And so I'm not sure if any of you are business owners, or do your own taxes, things like that. But there's always a worry when you're doing a business that our outgoing is more than our incoming, and that sends huge red flags for us, and it does for anyone, right? You worry about your taxes. How does this look? I don't want to be flagged. I don't want to be audited or something else. So I want to really make sure that my balances are correct. And what we're seeing is there are those within the government that thankfully are looking at those things and are saying that, listen, the outgoing, it's not matching. Well, there's a glaring, there's an elephant in the room, and that elephant is essentially unapportioned mandated taxes, which are unconstitutional. If you if you say, man, they're talking about spending, I want to look it up, well, then start asking what's an apportioned tax, and then what is a voluntary tax, and then look and see that how much of these illegal taxes are actually made, and that's where all that money comes from. Because all of our wars are fought.
Well, like income tax, that goes into like a lump account, doesn't it? Like it's just a free for all.
I guess I should explain. The Constitution gives us two types of taxes. It gives us a voluntary tax, which means you don't have to pay it if you don't participate. If you don't buy their gas, you don't have to pay that gas tax. You just ride your bike, ride your horse, ride whatever. You have the freedom of travel. That's another topic. But anyhow, so it's just voluntary, and it pays for certain things. There are mandatory taxes that everyone pays. There are things like on your property taxes, which and just varying taxes that they have that are fully apportioned. What fully apportioned means that it is mandated on everyone, and that it goes for the benefit of everyone. It's fully apportioned. So what that means is if it's supplying the military, that benefits all of us. We have the freedom to make these silly little videos because we have freedoms. We've been provided freedoms. They're fought for, and so the military benefits us. Now, that includes these corporate gains taxes, okay? So if you're an LLC or you're a company or a corporation and you show profit, you have to pay taxes on that. And so if you're an LLC, that's a mandatory tax. If you work for a state or government office or institution, or you're a contractor for the TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority, that's a mandatory, it's explicitly listed to be taxed. Now, there is no such thing as the individual, this personal income tax that's legal, because it's mandatory, it's mandated upon you, which means that's fine if it was fully apportioned, which means that it has to have that budget line item that says this is going to benefit everyone.
Right.
And so it does not. If you look at the amount of all of the spending on our foreign wars and things, that will equal what a lot of our corporate gains taxes, what corporate America is profiting and being taxed upon. And so that's being spent. But then you have these $900 billion that's been taken from the American people. And I understand Epoch Times had an article that said the IRS had really laid claim to loads more money due to some certain changes, some of which we'll find out at tax season. I'm not sure it's going to be a very fun year for us even. We're not an LLC or anything like that. But still, you've got this billions of dollars that's taken from the American people that is off the books. It doesn't go to our military foreign wars. So then you hear these really wild stories of how can they send $1 billion? We're in a deficit. How can they send $1 billion to all these other countries? And how can they funnel all this cash? Or you hear of corruption. Ding, ding, ding. There's a lot of money that's just flying around that is not apportioned. And so that's huge.
And they're not being held accountable.
Yeah, sure. So you gotta. These are the things you gotta look at. So that's a rabbit hole, and it never ends. You got to become a scholar on these things.
So there's another one that I want to bring up, and there has been glaring truth and evidence to this next one that has been going on for years. And Christians have been demonized for bringing this out. Project Veritas has been demonized for bringing to light some of this. So recently there was an undercover video of a male, and so he goes into a Planned Parenthood, I think in Iowa, I believe, and he states to them, "I've got a minor who needs an abortion." And they're like, well, it's not legal here in our state, but you can cross state lines and take this girl and have a abortion performed on her without her parents' consent. So here's my thing. I've got people that get up in arms about women's rights, but under your nose, Planned Parenthood is allowing traffickers to be productive in what sex traffickers do. And Planned Parenthood is going arm in arm with them in this. And so please don't come talk to me about women's rights if you don't understand the sexual
this is the
prostitution that's going on.
It's the abuse of women.
It's the abuse of women. And, and having abortions performed on late-term babies and selling their body parts, and please don't come to me with that. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. But again, this is another glaring lie on Planned Parenthood and what they actually do and what they actually practice in their
this
satanic,
all this seems like
ritualistic
old hat.
It is. It's old hat.
Because, we've had, what was his name that did the undercover video?
Well, he's part of that, I think.
And they,
James O'Keefe?
I don't know. But they, y'all can help us out. My memory fails me at times. But, went undercover, and he found all this, that they were enabling, pedophilia and prostitution, trafficking of humans, and serial abortions, and you can, I don't know if you can even find those videos still, to where they would advocate, Planned Parenthood would advocate that they could they could even be back at work. These young girls could have an abortion and be working again within 2 weeks. And he said, 2 weeks? Well, what am I going to do with them in 2 weeks? And they said, well, you could have them perform other services. And these are Planned Parenthood, people that work with Planned Parenthood that are coaching traffickers in how to work their children in the sex industry. And,
it's really sick.
And what happened? Well, that guy lands in jail. The American people still want to have a political argument. And frankly, this is why it's unforgivable. It's unforgivable to support Planned Parenthood or any of the things that they stand for. And God will hold them accountable. And this is why I think at the end of the day, it's not my children. You understand? It's not mine. I'm not going to go murder my children. It's not my children who are being trafficked. I love my community and these people who are desperately being victimized. But this is a judgment that is falling upon our nation. And
well, what were you watching a video this morning put out by Jerry Doris, right? On Instagram.
Yeah, the number one killer of children. It's not swimming pools. It's not cancer. It's abortion. That is the number one killer of children. Listen, we've listened to all the propaganda. Our era has heard that cigarettes are killing all these people. I remember, you remember your great granddad who was smoked from 8 years old to 92, never had cancer in his life, but all of a sudden cancer is prevalent in every single person that has tobacco. Now, I do think there's dangers and things that are involved with certain types and uses, but we've listened to that propaganda. We don't hear this about abortion, do we? It's the number one killer. We hear all sorts of statistics about life expectancies. The average age. None of them are true because none of them take into account abortion. If we take the average age of 0 and factor that in, you remember as a student, how hard is it to recuperate from 1 0 on your overall average grade in life?
Right.
And we've got all of these children being murdered. So no, we are the most barbaric of all peoples. This is awful.
And they think that child sacrifice was an ancient ritual. It's
But
happening in America.
So this
right
isn't.
now.
Yeah, this isn't. It isn't old or new. And the I said old or new. It's not a new thing, and it's not. It's not gone from us, but it's not the only thing either. A lot of people are being raised in arms with the issue of sponsors and how the CPS gets these children to what are called sponsors, and one of the criteria for that. Man,
I
there's
just watched a video this morning about that. It's bad.
It's an epidemic in America.
But we're going to move on because we're running out of time. So Tesla robot, there was a Tesla robot in Texas that suffered a malfunction and attacked one of the engineers and apparently stabbed him in the arm and leaving a trail of blood. And so I think this opens a can of worms with technology, robots, and AI. If you have not gone down that rabbit hole of, what is it they had on Haunted Cosmos? Lilith? What was that demon AI that they were talking about?
Oh, it might have been. Yeah, they had something they said was popping up on people's page that was it was an AI generated haunting that would just pop up on people's
there's a whole another aspect to the robot AI and everything else. And I just watched a video a couple days ago about how these human creators are starting to recognize that AI is almost developing a self-awareness on its own.
So AI is artificial intelligence, and you said this was a robot by Tesla.
Yeah.
So there's a few interesting caveats. A lot of people really like Elon Musk, and I find him interesting, but for different reasons. Elon Musk is well documented in cautioning leaders of hundreds of nations and large international global forums, saying artificial intelligence is more dangerous than nuclear war. Regulate it, regulate it, regulate it. And no one has listened. And I find it interesting that I wonder if Yeah, you're absolutely right, Tim. He says he's afraid of it, and yet I don't know if he's taken if you can't beat them, join them sort of a mindset. But his development of the whatever they call it, with connecting to your brain, and he's trying to link. He makes the accusation our use of phones that we become like cyborgs. We hold all our information and knowledge on our phones because the internet is so accessible to us, and we've lost our capacity for memory and things like that. But then also, just to understand some of the dynamics, Google has one of the creators of Google's artificial intelligence has said that they've sort of lost control. They've given certain freedoms to AI to generate and develop some of its own programs.
Well, and I think that's where AI art comes into.
Yeah. And so you've got so there's artificial intelligence is creating Neuralink.
Yeah, there you go.
So artificial intelligence is creating art. People are using that to generate their creativity. This is a serious problem. They're generating papers, all of their own writing. Their cognitive abilities are being diminished.
Well, but when we do this, though, it is it is creating, like, you talk about neurons in the brain. It's making that connection. AI is making those own neuron connection. Does that make sense?
If you're somebody who wants to study any of that, some of what you might look into is Google's purchase. This is years ago. Google's purchase of a company that created a supercomputer called DeepMind, and Elon Musk, even, I think if you've checked him out, you've likely seen videos already where he said it's a very small jump. It's a very small leap for the artificial intelligence to travel backwards into their main server in order to assume control. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people are like, ooh, AI is terrible. Now, yes, anything electronic. If you've got a smart house that everything's controlled artificially and by Bluetooth, I don't know. I guess you could maybe end up with a house like on Scooby-Doo that's going to lock you in. I don't know. So sorry about that. But, if you're a guy who's okay shutting the lights off, you've got your oil lamps and your wood stove, and you've got what you need, to me, doesn't really bother me a whole lot. Number two is AI cannot predict what is unpredictable. And this is the extreme advantage that you have. So unpredictability is a gift that we have. Because, and not only this, but morality, where the world has lost, and they've tried to, this is what the age of reason has given us in the modern age, which now most people have denied. AI cannot make decisions based off of morality. Because they cannot, even given that specific criteria, they cannot tell you right from wrong. They can look at a circumstance and evaluate what looks as if, but they're not there. They can't judge the intentions of the heart. And man can. This is what's crazy.
Well, right.
Is we can evaluate one another and say, what do they mean when they say that?
But we're getting into the point where they're wanting to give personhood to robots.
Yeah,
we're diving into that. When we're actually denying the right for a baby to live, and then we're going to give personhood to a robot.
So I've said
there's
something
a lot of
about
ethical issues.
Taking. We want to research these things, and so how do you look at this? We feel like we're responding. So I want, and I've said something about thinking tactically. Here's what I mean. We had so. When we developed Stop Ministries, this became the question. Awareness, yeah, people's talking about awareness of trafficking, yes. How do you get in front of that? How do you get before it happens? How do we stop it? How do we get on the front side? How do you come before the evil imaginations of men?
Right.
And so that's why we ended up with Stop Ministries and developing relationships and things. So now, when you think of artificial intelligence or anything else, how are you going to figure out the imaginations of men? How do you know where they're going to go with this stuff? I'm going to tell you where. Hollywood. Go to the movies. Years ago, like we said, oh, this sounds crazy. And Tim, maybe you seem like someone who's looked into some of this, but they actually have, was it Switzerland? Somewhere's granted citizenship to a robot, and I don't remember. It's been a while since I've looked at some of these things, but anyway, how many years ago was Bicentennial Man written?
Right.
This is years ago. This is in the Robin Williams era, okay? This is years and years where the whole process is making a robot that is human-like, enough human-like that they could that it would age and grow old and have citizenship. They're making movies talking about downloading your consciousness into a robot. Listen, it doesn't exist. It's not you. It's not a true existence. You can't download the soul of a man. All you can do is download pictures, memories, things. But anyhow, they make movies about this. So this tells you what are the imaginations of men, and you can ask yourself, is that something where they are disseminating things so that, so Star Trek, everyone remembers the days perhaps where the guy hid behind the wall and with a microphone and a stick, and he would shove the door closed and he would go, and then he would open it. Now you can ask yourself, did someone say, that's really cool, I wonder if we could make that happen? Or that Saudi Arabia granted citizenship. So I think that is correct. But yeah, so the predictive programming, and that's a good one, because what is predictive programming other than moving around or avoiding people's cognitive dissonance?
TV programming, they call it.
Yeah, what is the television called? It's called programming. They're programs. But why is that important? Because we say some extreme things and you think, oh no, wait a minute. Because we haven't done that work to prepare you to say, how can we make sure that you're accepting what we're telling you? Whereas they have. You can ask about this sliding door. If you're going to come up with a door that opens by itself, no one's going to walk through it. You have to have something that lets people know this is the way of the future.
I'm going to touch on this real quick, and you can go on after this. But I think this goes into, digital currency. And over somewhere in Europe, they are talking about the replacing the euro with the digital euro, and if you use over a certain amount in cash, jailing you for it. Because, and I don't think, and this is what worries me about America, is that how easy is it for you to go slide your debit card with that chip? How easy is it? How many of you take cash out and use cash on a daily basis? And, I'm looking at myself too, because I need to make sure that I'm taking cash out and I'm using cash. So everything has already gone digital in a sense. And so for them to implement that, just go ahead and push through the digital currency, it's people are not going to notice. They're just going to be accepting of it because we've been doing it for years, through our credit cards, through our debit cards. Even, like Vance, his paycheck doesn't, it goes automatically into his bank account. There is no physically going to the bank and depositing it into the account. It's all electronic, all of it. And so I think it's going, when I talk about this, I think it's going to happen overnight. And just like Vance was talking about, them putting things in TV programs and entertainment and things to kind of desensitize us from actual reality, I think it's a big issue. And I think it's something to keep an eye on in the future with a lot of these things. So there's a couple of other things that I want to go over I know we're going long. So Obama came out recently with a video telling illegal immigrants how to vote, how to go and vote. And so, as an American citizen, that's a right that I have to go and vote in an election. And so, the past couple of years, we've had paraded across every mass media January 6th. And what happened on January 6th? The insurrection and all the events that led up to it and after it and pointing fingers and this and that. You want to know what an insurrection looks like? A former president coming out and telling illegals how they can go vote. That's an insurrection. If you don't understand what's happening in our southern border right now, that's insurrection. Okay. So, are any of you all T-Mobile users? So this is going to be a heads up for you all. If you are a T-Mobile user, they have implemented a policy that is the acronym SHAFT. So, this stands for sex, hate, alcohol, firearms, or tobacco. So they have come out and they have said that if you are text messaging involving any of, sex, hate, alcohol, firearms, or tobacco, they are going to start fining you. So censorship just went up a notch. So now personally, on your personal text messages, they're going to start looking at your messages, and I'm sure that's another AI thing. If there's keywords in your text messages, they're going to start fining you. So I think it's time that if you have T-Mobile, and that you probably need to find a new provider. Yeah, think again on that. And so I think this is going to be. I think they're going to be a front runner in this, and I believe a lot of other providers will follow.
Well, it is for our area, right? Because they've brought in the 5G, so our region is going to be affected by it, and it will by all of this, guys. One of our local, if you're in our area, I don't know who all will listen to this, but one of our local branch managers has said that if the digital currency comes in, it will mean the closure of their bank. And so, guys, we'll be affected. I mean, you can't say you're not going to be affected. I mean,
well, but these things, we're talking about things that we have discussed, I've talked about with friends years ago. And, we were told we're conspiracy theorists or we're fear-mongering or what have you. But these things are happening right now. Things that we have been keeping an eye on, they are implementing and moving forward with. So, Klaus Schwab, do y'all know who that is? If you don't, please look him up. Please. Yeah. If you don't know what the World Economic Forum is, please look it up. Please. So he was recently quoted in saying, "We don't need to have elections because we can predict the outcome." Through, I'm sure, AI. So,
I don't think through AI. I mean,
well, that's what they're going to say, though.
Well,
they're going to use that. They're going to say
certain influences, right?
But they're going to say that through AI prediction. We can know the outcome of elections. So therefore, you don't have to go vote. We already know your thoughts.
Well, what worries me, like I told you, we watch movies and it's weird. Go watch a 10-year-old movie and you feel like, man, what in the world? I
can't even watch older movies anymore.
Yeah, people talk about how prophetic they seem. And so it does. It is slightly concerning when you see them releasing movies like Civil War coming up, and you see, obviously, some things are reactive, right? I think we see in economic downturn, historically speaking, during darker periods of history, you would see these things, right? Look at what was the era that the vampires and Dracula and everything was created. Did that not come out of a lot of economic downturn and a lot of tumultuous times? Yes, it did. So we had, war movies that would come out and would sort of validate some of the dark feelings in response to war. They would instigate feelings of patriotism, and yet we've seen that same precedent set or carry on where we're going in dark times. Why is it we have such infatuation with things like Walking Dead, zombie apocalypse, things like Game of Thrones, and all of this? That's just, in my view, is morbid. All of that is morbid, and so you have all this, and then now we have even, I think, a new. We're seeing things like Civil War come out. We're seeing like this apocalypse, but it's not. It's like government and things like that. Now people are feeling that. They might be feeling it, but we can read the signs of the times. You can back off and say, look at the macro event. What's the big picture? And man, it is. I think that we need to keep our eyes open, so that way we're aware. Because listen, what is it? Children are only afraid of the dark because they cannot see. Because there's nothing there. Once the lights come on, the fear is gone. So to see something helps us. It helps us to think more clearly. So that's the only reason we say things that we say.
Okay, and I'm going to end with a couple of things. So, ABC News came out with a report, what to know about holiday heart syndrome. Rates of heart arrhythmias tend to spike during December holidays. It's just to add to the list, I guess.
What does that mean?
That means that you died because it's December.
Because
it's Christmas.
Huh.
I shouldn't laugh, but we're getting to the point of just complete ridiculousness. Okay. So before I read these, I'm gonna read Isaiah 5:20 for you all. Okay? And as we get further, as we've gone on further into the, we're ending 2023 and we're moving into 2024. Isaiah 5:20. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Okay? So, in ending this video, this one's laughable, okay? This one's in Canada. So Trudeau has a new policy that they're going to put feminine hygiene products in men's bathrooms. Now, growing up in biology class, women are the only ones who have uteruses. Men do not. So it's completely, and now we have men who think they can get pregnant, who think they can have periods, who think they can do all these things, and they are lying. It's a lie. And so, and I'm not afraid to say that. If I hurt your feelings, grow some, I think. We're in a time when everything is upside down. Everything is completely backwards, and it is ridiculous.
Hey.
It's the mental disturbance and the mental illnesses that I'm seeing is ridiculous.
Well,
and I'm supposed to entertain those things?
Well, this is where I think we do well, just as Christians, to step back and recognize that some of these patterns, again, before it was comedy. We would see men do women skits as women, and it was funny, and we would laugh. Yeah, but should we have been laughing at it? Should we have found that funny?
Well, but they found it funny because it was
right. So this is what I'm getting at. We have really we had as our favorites people, bands who walked around in high heels and painted their faces with makeup and things like that. And so, sorry if you're a Kiss fan, But should we have applauded that? Should we have applauded I don't know. Sorry to the people who like Prince and stuff, but that is not manly. And maybe women began to find attractive things that they should not have found attractive, and men likewise. And I just think we really should understand, go back to what the scriptures really had set. There was a precedent that was set, and it's okay to say simple is good. Simple.
Well, but they're telling you, they're trying to indoctrinate you that there is no truth. That there is no truth. And so I watched a video this morning, and this woman stated this. It says, telling the truth and the truth itself has become a right-wing concept and is of the force of evil. And essentially knowledge, and the response to this woman was essentially that knowledge and wisdom have become unacquainted. And so we're living in a time where telling the truth and truth telling is being labeled a right-wing concept, a political concept, right? When it's actually should be a Christian concept. And so I think it's a tactic that they use a lot, like they use in abortion. They make it a political issue instead of a moral issue. And so, and a lot of time I heard a video this morning. Well, Christians need to stay in their lane. Excuse me? You need to stay in your lane.
Well, there is no lanes.
Well, but my point is being truth is truth. There is a truth. There is morals. There is ethics. There is things along those lines. You cannot push that that we do not know, that you don't know, that nobody knows what truth is.
So for those who are thinking through these things, there's a reason that our Constitution doesn't have something like marriage in it. Is because it's not, the government doesn't legislate those moral things, but whenever they've sort of they've hijacked, and I think that's what you're saying, isn't it? That they have hijacked these moral grounds, but you can't have an education that is free from a worldview. And yet we hear Christians, I think, largely insist.
They're trying to make it, and not only that, it's a change of definition of words. And again, they have replaced the church with the state, and so therefore they're now replacing the Christian characteristics and standards. Does that make sense? With that of a political party who is deeming themselves God to determine the morals and ethics.
So they're taking those terms, but you can't have an education that's free from theology. If you're the only this thought that to complete this thought that if you remove God, moral, Scripture from your education. If you're one of those Christians who have said, well, if we allow prayer or something, then we have to allow the Satanists. We have to allow this. What you're arguing for is an atheistic worldview. You're part of the problem. You have to understand it. Oh, no. You must. Either you're teaching science, math, and all these things as from a creator or who has no creator. And there are no options. It's a default. You just don't get the choice. And so, anyway, we have to, I think, be very careful with that, because all things have some sort of moral ground. They have some sort of theological implication. So you got to reconcile that. You have to reconcile with how are you leading. And you're absolutely right. Truth belongs to us. It is us who holds the revelation so that we don't take these things to clandestine ends. When we say truth, we understand that is both natural truth and specially revealed truth, and those perfectly coincide. They do not contradict one another. One does not lead to the other. They both come from the same God.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think you actually ever did read Isaiah 5:20 that you
What?
had pulled up. You said you were going to read.
I just did.
Oh, okay.
I had it pulled up. I had some
Yeah.
other ones pulled up.
Okay, I didn't know if you read it.
But I want to end this video. And I know most of you that are watching right now, you grew up in the country. You grew up maybe wandering the woods and wondering, and just, I mean, at least I did. I grew up wandering through the woods, you know, spending hours, just trailblazing or what have you. Those of us who have done that, how easy is it for you to pick out a deer trail through the woods? Can you pick it out pretty easily? I know I can. Because I can see and observe all the little telltale signs of movement, of a path that has been used quite often. And the thing about a deer trail is that if you don't know what you're looking for, you can easily overlook it. And I think that finding that narrow way is much like it. And Scripture tells us plainly about, you know, that there's going to come a time. And so I'm going to leave you with some Scripture. And so it's kind of long, so please stick with me, okay? So this one is from 2 Timothy 3, and I'm going to read the whole chapter, I believe. But understand this, that in the last days there will come times of difficulty, for people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having the appearance of godliness but denying its power. Avoid such people. For among them are those who creep into households and capture weak women, burned with sins and led astray by various passions, always learning and never able to arrive at a knowledge of the truth. Just as, how do you pronounce that?
Huh?
Janice and Jambres opposed Moses, so these men also opposed the truth. Men corrupted in mind and disqualified regarding the faith, but they will not get very far, for their folly will be plain to all, as was that of those two men. You, however, have followed my teaching, my conduct, my aim in life, my faith, my patience, my love, my steadfastness, my persecutions and sufferings that happened to me at Antioch, at Iconium, and Lystra, which persecutions I endured, yet for them all the Lord rescued me. Indeed, all who desire to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted, while evil people and impostors will go on from bad to worse, deceiving and being deceived. But as for you, continue in what you have learned and have firmly believed, knowing from whom you learned it, and how from childhood you have been acquainted with the sacred writings, which are able to make you wise for salvation through faith in Christ Jesus. All Scripture is breathed out by God and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for correction, and for training in righteousness, that the man of God may be complete, equipped for every good work. So I'm going to go on and I'm going to read Matthew 24. I'm trying to decide if I'm not going to read this whole thing, but So Jesus left the temple and was going away when his disciples came to point out to him the building of the temple. But he answered them, "You see all these, do you not? Truly I say to you, there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down." As he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming of the end of the age?" And Jesus answered them, "See that no one leads you astray. For many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Christ,' and they will lead many astray. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are but the beginning of the birth pains. Then they will deliver you up to the tribulation and put you to death, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another, and many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved, and this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and the end will come. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let the one who is on the housetop not go down to take what is in his house, and let the one who is in the field not turn back to take his cloak. And alas, for women who are pregnant and for those who are nursing infants in those days, pray that your flight may not be in winter or on a Sabbath, for then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been from the beginning of the world until now. No, and never will be. And if those days had not been cut short, no human being would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Then if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there he is, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders, so as to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you beforehand. So if they say to you, look, he's in the wilderness, do not go out. If they say, look, he's in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as the lightning comes from the east and shines as far as the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Wherever the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. So I will leave you with those scriptures today. Please meditate on them. Know that that narrow path is narrow and will not be wide. Know that there are things that are happening that indicate the time and seasons, and Christ tells us to be observant of those times and seasons.
Yeah, don't forget, guys, if there's anything we've talked about, don't hesitate to private message, and we get you some of those resources. You should be able to look up most of those on your own, but if you're having trouble, then we can get you some links or something and connect you with some of those people or books or that PDF that I mentioned. So that's it.
Y'all have a great day.